Welcome back to another deep dive into the twisted, blood-soaked world of Bloodborne. Tonight, we venture into one of the most heartbreaking and profound stories ever told in gaming, the eternal torment of Gehrman. Gehrman, the first hunter. Over the next few hours, we'll uncover the tragic tale of a man who became both teacher and prisoner, mentor and victim, in a cosmic game that stripped away everything he held dear. So settle in, get comfortable, and let us begin this melancholic journey through the hunter's dream, where time stands still and suffering stretches into infinity. This is the story of a prison disguised as paradise, and the broken man who tends its gardens of memory and regret. In the sprawling Gothic city of Gehrman, where gaslight flickers against ancient stone and the scent of incense mingles with the metallic tang of blood, there stands no monument to Gehrman's sacrifice. No statue commemorates his achievements, no plaque records his deeds, yet his influence permeates every cobblestone street, every hunter's weapon, every technique passed down through generations of those who stalk the night. To understand Gehrman's prison, we must first understand the man he was before the dream claimed him, before he became the host of horrors, the keeper of an impossible sanctuary that exists between sleeping and waking, between life and death, between hope and despair. Chapter 1: The Making of the First Hunter. Long before the hunter's dream cast its pallid light across dimensions unknown, Gehrman walked the waking world as a man of flesh and bone, driven by purpose and burning with the passion of discovery. The Gehrman of his youth was a city on the cusp of transformation, teetering on the edge of revelations that would reshape humanity's understanding of existence itself. The ancient two Pthumerian tombs beneath Gehrman had begun yielding their secrets to the scholarly ambitions of Bag-and-Worth College. Willem, the future provost, led expeditions into the labyrinthine depths where forgotten civilizations had once communed with beings from beyond the stars. It was during these early excavations that the miraculous old blood was first discovered, a substance that could heal any wound, cure any disease, and grant strength beyond mortal limitations. But with such power came inevitable consequences. The blood transformed more than just the body. It awakened something primal and terrible within those who partook of its crimson blessing. The first symptoms were subtle: enhanced strength, improved reflexes, a sharpening of the senses that bordered on the supernatural. Yet as the transformations progressed, recipients found themselves changing in ways that defied both medicine and sanity. They became beasts. The earliest recorded beast attack occurred in the lower districts of Gehrman, where a blood minister named Cornelius underwent a grotesque transformation during what should have been a routine healing ceremony. Witnesses described how his body stretched and contorted, bones snapping and reforming as thick fur erupted from expanding flesh. His screams of agony gave way to inhuman howls as his mind surrendered to instincts older than civilization itself. When the healing church's guards finally cornered Cornelius in the sewers beneath the cathedral ward, he had torn apart 3 innocent civilians and was feeding on their remains with savage abandon. The creature that had once been a gentle man of faith could only be stopped through overwhelming force, and even then, it fought with the desperate fury of a cornered animal until its heart finally ceased to beat. This incident marked the beginning of what would become known as the Scourge of the Beast, and it was in response to this threat that Gehrman first took up arms against the darkness spreading through his beloved city. Unlike the later hunters who would follow established traditions and proven techniques, Gehrman had to invent the very concept of hunting from scratch. There were no guidebooks, no training manuals, no experienced mentors to teach him the art of beast slaying. He had only his own intelligence, his determination to protect the innocent, and an intuitive understanding of how to turn the old blood's gifts against the monsters it created. His first hunts were crude affairs, brutal encounters, where survival mattered more than elegance. Armed with little more than a woodsman's axe and his own courage, Gehrman stalked the transformed through Gehrman's maze-like streets, learning their patterns, studying their weaknesses, developing strategies that would allow a mortal man to stand against creatures of supernatural power and ferocity. Those early experiences taught him that conventional weapons were insufficient for the task at hand. Beast hide was too thick for normal blades, their bones too dense for ordinary metal to penetrate effectively. Moreover, the transformed retained enough human intelligence to use tools and set traps, making each hunt a deadly game of cat and mouse, where a single mistake could mean death. It was during this period of experimentation and refinement that Gehrman began developing the unique weapons that would become the hallmark of the hunt. The burial blade, his personal weapon and greatest creation, represented a perfect synthesis of practicality and artistry. Its curved design allowed for both precision strikes and sweeping attacks, while its ability to tow into a more compact form made it ideal for the close-quarters combat that characterized urban hunting. But Gehrman's innovations extended far beyond weaponry. He understood that hunting required more than just superior equipment. It demanded a complete reimagining of how humans could move, fight, and think in combat situations. The quicksilver bullets he developed allowed hunters to exploit the old blood's supernatural properties, channeling their life force into devastating ranged attacks that could stagger even the largest beasts. His techniques for dodging and positioning revolutionized close-quarters combat, teaching hunters to use their enhanced agility to stay mobile during encounters rather than relying on heavy armor and static defenses. The rally system he pioneered encouraged aggressive fighting by allowing hunters to regain health through continued attacks, turning the natural human instinct for self-preservation into a tactical advantage. As word of his successes spread throughout Gehrman, volunteers began seeking him out, desperate to learn the skills necessary to protect their families and communities from the growing beast threat. Gehrman found himself reluctantly taking on the role of teacher, despite his preference for solitary work. These early students formed the nucleus of what would eventually become the Hunter's Workshop, a clandestine organization dedicated to training and equipping those brave enough to take up arms against the scourge. The workshop itself began as nothing more than an abandoned warehouse in Old Gehrman, a space that Gehrman converted into a combination training ground, armory, and research facility. Here, he refined his weapon designs, developed new hunting techniques, and began documenting the behavior patterns of different beast types. The walls became covered with anatomical drawings, tactical notes, and crude maps marking known beast lairs and feeding grounds. His students during this period included some of the most legendary figures in hunting history. Lady Maria of the Astral Clock Tower, whose elegant swordsmanship and noble bearing concealed a fierce dedication to protecting the innocent. Henrik, the veteran hunter, whose calm demeanor masked a deadly efficiency in combat. Dura, whose fascination with firearms would eventually lead to innovations in ranged hunting techniques. Each student brought their own perspective and skills to the workshop, contributing to a collective knowledge base that grew more sophisticated with each passing season. Lady Maria's aristocratic background provided access to rare materials and funding for equipment upgrades. Henrik's experience as a city guard offered insights into urban patrol strategies and crowd control techniques. Dura's mechanical aptitude led to improvements in firearm design and maintenance. Under Gehrman's guidance, these disparate individuals gradually developed into a cohesive unit capable of responding to beast incidents with unprecedented effectiveness. They learned to work in coordinated teams, using complex strategies that combined individual strengths while compensating for personal weaknesses. Most importantly, they learned to trust one another completely, understanding that in the heat of combat against supernatural predators, hesitation or doubt could prove fatal. The workshop's growing reputation attracted attention from the healing church, which had initially viewed the hunters with suspicion and concern. Church leaders worried that armed civilians hunting in the streets might interfere with their own efforts to control the beast problem through religious and medical interventions. There were heated debates within the church hierarchy about whether to officially sanction the hunters or attempt to shut down their operations entirely. Gehrman's diplomatic skills proved as valuable as his hunting prowess during these negotiations. He understood that the church commanded enormous resources and influence that could either support or destroy the hunting effort. Rather than positioning the workshop as a rival organization, He carefully presented it as a complementary service that could handle situations beyond the scope of conventional religious solutions. The partnership that emerged from these discussions represented a compromise that satisfied neither side completely, but provided practical benefits to both. The church would provide funding, equipment, and logistical support for hunting operations, while the workshop would coordinate their activities with church authorities and share intelligence about beast movements and behavior patterns. This arrangement allowed the hunting effort to expand dramatically, but it also introduced new complexities and constraints that would eventually prove problematic. Church involvement meant church oversight, and church oversight meant that hunting operations had to be conducted according to church priorities rather than purely tactical considerations. Hunters found themselves required to avoid certain areas, protect certain individuals, and sometimes ignore obvious threats in deference to political considerations. Gehrman adapted to these constraints with characteristic pragmatism, understanding that compromise was necessary for the greater good. He established formal protocols for reporting beast sightings, standardized training procedures for new recruits, and created administrative systems that satisfied church bureaucrats while preserving the workshop's operational independence. Chapter 2: The Discovery of the Old Hunters. As Gehrman's reputation grew and his techniques spread throughout Gehrman, he began attracting the attention of hunters from beyond the city's borders. These were individuals who had encountered similar supernatural threats in distant lands, men and women who carried their own weapons, their own methods, and their own dark stories of battles fought against creatures that defied conventional understanding. The first of these foreign hunters to arrive at the workshop was a mysterious figure known only as the Bloody Crow of Cainhurst. Dressed in elaborate feathered attire that marked him as a member of the aristocratic Cainhurst court, he carried weapons of exquisite craftsmanship and demonstrated fighting techniques that seemed to blend swordplay with supernatural abilities that bordered on the impossible. His arrival created immediate tension within the workshop community. The local hunters had developed their own culture and traditions over years of shared struggle, and the newcomer's aloof demeanor and exotic fighting style made integration difficult. Moreover, his obvious aristocratic background reminded many of the social divisions that plagued Gehrman, where wealthy nobles enjoyed privileged access to the old blood, while common citizens suffered the consequences of its side effects. Yet Gehrman recognized the value of the knowledge and experience that foreign hunters could bring to their operations. The Bloody Crow's techniques for exploiting supernatural speed and agility were unlike anything the workshop had encountered, and his weapons incorporated design principles that suggested advanced understanding of the old blood's properties. Despite the cultural friction his presence created, his contributions to the hunting effort proved invaluable. Other exotic hunters followed, each bringing their own unique perspectives and capabilities. A silent warrior from the Far Eastern lands demonstrated meditation techniques that allowed hunters to maintain mental clarity during extended operations against mind-affecting beasts. A tribal shaman from the southern wilderness shared knowledge of herbal preparations that could enhance natural healing abilities and provide resistance to certain forms of corruption. Perhaps most significantly, a group of scholars from the hidden archives of Cainhurst arrived bearing ancient texts that contained references to similar supernatural threats from throughout history. These documents revealed that the beast scourge was not unique to Gehrman, but rather part of a larger pattern of cosmic intervention that had been affecting human civilization for millennia. The implications of this discovery fundamentally changed how Gehrman understood their mission. What had initially seemed like a local problem, requiring local solutions, was revealed to be part of a vast ongoing conflict between humanity and forces beyond human comprehension. The beasts stalking Gehrman's streets were merely the latest manifestation of an ancient pattern of predation and corruption that stretched back to the dawn of recorded history. This revelation forced a complete reassessment of hunting strategy and objectives. If the beast scourge was indeed part of a larger cosmic pattern, then traditional approaches focused on individual beast elimination would prove insufficient in the long term. The workshop needed to develop methods for addressing the root causes of supernatural corruption, not just its visible symptoms. Gehrman began organizing research expeditions to other locations mentioned in the Cainhurst archives, sending teams of experienced hunters to investigate reported supernatural activity in distant regions. These expeditions served multiple purposes. They provided valuable intelligence about the scope and nature of the cosmic threat. They established contact with other communities facing similar challenges, and they offered advanced training opportunities for hunters ready to move beyond local operations. The reports that came back from these expeditions painted a disturbing picture of widespread supernatural contamination, affecting communities across the known world. Ancient burial sites were spawning undead guardians that preyed on unwary travelers. Coastal settlements reported encounters with amphibious creatures that seemed to emerge from the deepest ocean trenches. Mountain villages described attacks by winged horrors that descended from impossible heights under cover of darkness. Yet, each location had also developed its own methods for dealing with supernatural threats, and these local solutions provided valuable insights that could be adapted for use in Gehrman. The workshop began incorporating techniques from dozens of different hunting traditions, creating a synthesis of knowledge that was far more sophisticated than any single regional approach. This period of expansion and integration also saw the development of the Hunter's Mark system, a method for marking and tracking supernatural threats that allowed for coordinated responses across vast geographical areas. The marks themselves were more than simple symbols. They incorporated elements of the old blood that allowed them to resonate with supernatural energies, creating a detection network that could identify potential threats before they manifested as obvious dangers. The success of these innovations attracted attention from even more distant sources, including representatives of the Healing Church's international branches and emissaries from foreign governments, dealing with their own supernatural crises. The workshop found itself becoming a center of international cooperation against cosmic threats, a role that Gehrman had never anticipated or particularly desired. Managing these complex relationships required diplomatic skills that went far beyond anything Gehrman had needed during his early days as a solitary hunter. He found himself mediating disputes between hunting traditions with fundamentally different philosophies, negotiating resource-sharing agreements between communities with competing interests, and attempting to maintain workshop independence while accepting support from increasingly powerful patrons. The strain of these responsibilities began affecting his personal relationships with his original students and closest collaborators. Lady Maria expressed concern that the workshop was losing its focus on protecting Gehrman in favor of grand international ambitions. Henrik worried that accepting foreign support was compromising the organization's independence and integrity. Jura questioned whether the expanded operations were actually making anyone safer or simply spreading the hunters too thin across too many fronts. These concerns came to a head during what became known as the Cainhurst incident, when political tensions between the workshop's various international partners erupted into open conflict. A dispute over hunting rights in a border region escalated into armed confrontation between Cainhurst nobles and Healing Church representatives, with workshop hunters caught in the middle of a situation they were neither trained nor equipped to handle. Gehrman's attempts to mediate the conflict failed spectacularly, resulting in casualties on all sides and the temporary dissolution of several key partnerships. The incident forced him to confront the reality that the workshop's expanded mission had grown beyond his ability to manage effectively, and that his skills as a hunter and teacher did not automatically translate into competence as an international diplomat. The aftermath of the Cainhurst incident marked a turning point in Gehrman's leadership style and the workshop's operational philosophy. Rather than continuing to pursue grand strategic objectives on multiple fronts, he refocused the organization's efforts on its core mission of protecting Gehrman and the surrounding regions. International partnerships were maintained, but restructured to emphasize information sharing rather than joint operations. This period of organizational restructuring coincided with disturbing reports from the deepest Pthumerian ruins beneath Gehrman. Excavation teams were encountering increasingly dangerous supernatural phenomena, including ancient guardians that seemed to awaken in response to human intrusion and architectural features that appeared to shift and change when not directly observed. More troubling still were reports of excavators who returned from the depths, exhibiting signs of mental instability and supernatural awareness that surpassed even the effects of direct old blood exposure. These individuals spoke of vast underground chambers filled with impossible geometries, of whispered voices that spoke in languages that predated human civilization, and of presences that watched from shadows that fell in directions that defied conventional understanding of light and space. Gehrman recognized that these developments represented a fundamental escalation in the supernatural threat facing Gehrman. The beast's scourge, dangerous as it was, had at least involved enemies that could be understood and countered through conventional hunting methods. The phenomena emerging from the deepest ruins suggested the presence of cosmic forces that operated according to principles beyond human comprehension. Chapter 3: The Workshop's Golden Age. The years following the organizational restructuring marked what many historians would later call the Workshop's Golden Age, a period of unprecedented success in beast hunting operations and technological innovation. Gehrman's decision to focus on local priorities while maintaining selective international partnerships proved strategically sound, allowing the organization to develop deep expertise in the specific challenges posed by Gehrman's unique supernatural environment. The beast scourge during this period had evolved into a more predictable pattern, with outbreaks occurring in cycles that corresponded to certain lunar phases and seasonal transitions. The workshop's improved understanding of these patterns allowed for proactive responses that could often contain or eliminate threats before they posed serious dangers to civilian populations. Gehrman's personal involvement in hunting operations decreased during this period, as administrative responsibilities demanded more of his attention, but his influence on day-to-day activities remained profound. The training programs he had developed produced hunters of exceptional quality, individuals who combined technical excellence with tactical creativity and deep understanding of supernatural combat principles. Lady Maria emerged as the workshop's most gifted field operative during this era, her natural aristocratic bearing and deadly swordsmanship making her equally effective in social situations and life-or-death combat encounters. Her missions often involved infiltrating high society gatherings, where wealthy citizens engaged in dangerous blood experimentation, using her social connections to gather intelligence while positioning herself to intervene if supernatural threats manifested. Henrique's steady temperament and vast experience made him invaluable for training new recruits and managing complex multi-team operations. His ability to remain calm under pressure and make sound tactical decisions during chaotic combat situations saved countless lives during major beast incidents. Many of the workshop's most successful hunters credited their survival to techniques and mindsets they had learned from Henrique's patient instruction. Gehrman's mechanical innovations revolutionized the workshop's approach to equipment design and maintenance. His development of specialized ammunition types allowed hunters to exploit specific beast vulnerabilities more effectively, while his improvements to firearms design made ranged combat a viable option even against the largest and most resilient supernatural threats. The workshop's arsenal during this period represented the pinnacle of supernatural combat technology. Weapons incorporated principles derived from old blood research, allowing them to channel supernatural energies while remaining safe for human use. Armor designs balanced protection against supernatural attacks with the mobility requirements of aggressive hunting tactics. Specialized tools and accessories provided solutions for specific challenges encountered during different types of operations. Perhaps most importantly, the workshop developed comprehensive medical and psychological support systems for its hunters. The nature of supernatural combat inevitably resulted in both physical injuries and mental trauma that conventional medicine could not address effectively. Workshop physicians became experts in treating wounds inflicted by supernatural claws and fangs, while counselors developed techniques for helping hunters process the psychological stress of repeatedly confronting creatures that challenged basic assumptions about reality and human nature. The success of these support systems significantly reduced the attrition rate among workshop hunters, allowing experienced operatives to remain active for much longer periods while maintaining peak effectiveness. This institutional knowledge accumulation created a feedback loop that continuously improved operational capabilities, as lessons learned from each encounter could be immediately incorporated into training programs and tactical doctrines. The workshop's reputation during this golden age attracted volunteers from throughout the region, creating a selection process that could identify individuals with the specific psychological and physical attributes necessary for supernatural combat. Successful candidates underwent intensive training programs that combined traditional martial arts instruction with specialized courses in supernatural creature behavior, basic medical training, equipment maintenance, and tactical coordination. The graduation ceremonies for these training programs became significant events within Gehrman's underground resistance community, marking the moment when ordinary citizens transform themselves into humanity's defenders against cosmic horror. The sense of pride and purpose that these ceremonies generated helped maintain morale during difficult periods when beast activity increased or particularly challenging threats emerged. Gehrman took personal satisfaction in watching his students mature into capable leaders and innovators in their own right. The workshop had evolved from his personal vendetta against supernatural threats into a self-sustaining institution that could continue its mission even without his direct involvement. This realization was both gratifying and melancholic, as it forced him to confront the reality that his most important contributions might lie in the past rather than the future. During quiet moments between crises, he began documenting the techniques and principles he had developed over years of hunting experience. These writings were intended as reference materials for future generations of hunters, insurance against the possibility that critical knowledge might be lost if key personnel were killed during operations. The process of organizing and articulating his insights forced him to reflect on how far the hunting effort had progressed since his early days of crude improvisation and desperate survival. The resulting texts became foundational documents for hunter education, covering everything from basic weapon maintenance to advanced tactics for dealing with specific types of supernatural threats. More importantly, they captured the philosophical and ethical principles that Gehrman believed should guide hunting operations: protection of the innocent as the primary objective, proportional response to supernatural threats, respect for the humanity that beasts had lost, and acceptance of personal sacrifice in service of the greater good. These philosophical elements proved crucial for maintaining organizational cohesion as the workshop expanded and incorporated hunters from diverse backgrounds and motivations. The shared commitment to protecting humanity provided common ground that transcended personal differences and cultural conflicts, creating a sense of unity that strengthened operational effectiveness. The workshop's success during this period also attracted attention from academic institutions interested in studying supernatural phenomena from a scholarly perspective. Bergenworth College established formal partnerships that allowed researchers to study beast specimens and supernatural artifacts recovered during hunting operations, while workshop hunters gained access to academic resources and theoretical frameworks that enhanced their understanding of cosmic threats. This collaboration between practical hunters and theoretical researchers proved mutually beneficial, leading to discoveries that advanced both supernatural combat techniques and academic understanding of cosmic forces. Workshop field reports provided empirical data that validated or challenged various scholarly theories, while academic insights helped hunters develop more effective strategies for dealing with increasingly sophisticated supernatural threats. The integration of scholarly research into hunting operations marked a significant evolution in how the workshop approached its mission. Rather than relying solely on trial and error, learning through direct combat experience, hunters could now draw upon systematic knowledge bases that identified patterns and principles underlying supernatural phenomena. This scientific approach to supernatural combats significantly improved operational success rates while reducing casualties among field operatives. However, this period of success and expansion also contained the seeds of future tragedy. The workshop's growing prominence and influence made it an increasingly attractive target for cosmic entities seeking to manipulate human institutions for their own purposes. The Zissen's effectiveness in combating supernatural threats had drawn attention from forces that operated on scales far beyond human comprehension, entities that viewed the workshop's success as both an obstacle to their plans and an opportunity to recruit powerful servants. Chapter 4: The Approach of Great Ones. The first signs of cosmic attention manifesting around the workshop were subtle, so gradual, and seemingly benign that even Gehrman's experienced eye failed to recognize them as harbingers of catastrophic change. It began with dreams, not the ordinary dreams of exhausted hunters seeking rest after difficult operations, but shared visions that multiple individuals experienced simultaneously, visions that carried an otherworldly clarity and emotional resonance that lingered long after waking. These dreams typically featured vast cosmic landscapes, where impossible geometries stretched toward horizons that curved in directions the human mind could barely comprehend. Towering structures of unknown purpose dominated alien skylines, their surfaces covered in symbols that seemed to convey meaning despite being utterly foreign to human experience. Most disturbing of all were the presences that inhabited these dreamscapes, vast intelligences that observed human consciousness with interest that felt both benevolent and terrifyingly intense. Initially, the hunters who experienced these dreams interpreted them as stress responses to their demanding work. Supernatural combat inevitably exposed individuals to sights and experiences that challenged conventional understanding of reality, and vivid dreams seemed like a natural psychological mechanism for processing these encounters. The workshop's medical staff documented the dreams as curiosities, but saw no immediate cause for concern. However, as more hunters reported similar experiences, patterns began emerging that suggested something far more significant was occurring. The dreams were becoming more frequent and more detailed, with participants able to recall specific architectural features, symbolic patterns, and even fragments of the alien communications they encountered. More troubling still, some hunters began exhibiting enhanced capabilities following these dream experiences: improved reflexes, heightened sensory awareness, and intuitive understanding of supernatural creature behavior that exceeded anything achievable through conventional training. Gehrman's first personal encounter with these cosmic influences occurred during a routine inspection of newly recovered Pthumerian artifacts. He was examining a ceremonial chalice decorated with intricate engravings when he suddenly found himself transported to one of the alien landscapes described in the dream reports. The transition was seamless and utterly convincing. One moment, he was standing in the workshop's artifact storage room, and the next he was walking across crystalline plains beneath skies filled with swirling cosmic energies. The presence that approached him in this impossible place was beyond description in conventional terms. It existed as a confluence of awareness and intention that manifested sometimes as geometric patterns, sometimes as flowing organic forms, and sometimes as pure emotional resonance that bypassed sensory perception entirely. When it communicated, the information arrived directly in his consciousness without passing through hearing or vision, carrying meanings too complex for ordinary language to convey. The entity identified itself as the Moon Presence, a cosmic being whose existence spanned multiple dimensions and whose consciousness operated on temporal scales that made human lifespans seem like brief flickering moments. It expressed profound interest in humanity's struggle against supernatural corruption, describing the beast scourge as part of a larger cosmic conflict between competing forms of transcendence. According to the Moon Presence, the old blood that had created the beast scourge was itself a tool employed by rival cosmic entities seeking to transform human consciousness according to their own alien nature. The transformations it produced, the bestial savagery, the loss of rational thought, the reduction of complex human personalities to primitive instinctual drives, represented one possible path for human evolution, but not the only path. The moon presence offered an alternative vision of human transcendence, one that preserved rational thought and individual personality while granting access to cosmic awareness and supernatural capabilities. This transformation would allow humanity to participate in cosmic affairs as conscious partners rather than mindless servants, creating possibilities for cooperation and mutual benefit that pure bestial evolution could never achieve. The price for this assistance was service, not slavery, the moon presence insisted, but willing cooperation in advancing cosmic objectives that aligned with humanity's own interests. The workshop's hunters had already demonstrated their effectiveness in combating supernatural threats, and their skills could be enhanced and directed toward larger purposes that would benefit both human civilization and cosmic stability. Gehrman found him simultaneously attracted to and disturbed by this proposal. The promise of enhanced capabilities and cosmic knowledge was genuinely appealing, particularly given the escalating supernatural threats facing Gehrman. The workshop's conventional methods, effective as they had proven against individual beasts and small-scale outbreaks, might prove insufficient against the larger cosmic forces that seemed to be directing the Scourge's evolution. Yet the moon presence's alien nature made it impossible to fully trust its motivations or understand the true implications of accepting its offer. The entity's consciousness operated according to principles that were fundamentally incompatible with human psychology and ethics, making meaningful communication across species barriers extremely difficult. What the moon presence described as cooperation might represent something entirely different from a human perspective. The entity seemed to understand his hesitation and offered a demonstration of the benefits it could provide. Gehrman found himself briefly experiencing consciousness from a cosmic perspective, perceiving reality as layers of interconnected energy patterns that extended across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The sensation was overwhelming but also intoxicating, offering glimpses of knowledge and understanding that transcended anything achievable through ordinary human experience. When the vision ended and he found himself back in the workshop's storage room, Gehrman was left with enhanced awareness that manifested in subtle but significant ways. His perception of supernatural energies had become much more acute, allowing him to detect threats and opportunities that would previously have remained hidden. His understanding of beast behavior had deepened to include instinctive knowledge of their motivations and weaknesses. Most importantly, he could sense the cosmic forces operating beneath the surface of apparently mundane events, recognizing patterns and connections that revealed the true scope of the supernatural conflict engulfing Gehrman. This enhanced awareness came with psychological costs that became apparent over the following weeks. The cosmic perspective he had briefly experienced made ordinary human concerns seem trivial and meaningless, creating a sense of existential detachment that affected his relationships with colleagues and students. The knowledge of vast cosmic conflicts made local hunting operations feel like insignificant skirmishes in wars whose ultimate outcomes had already been determined by forces beyond human influence. Lady Maria was the first to notice changes in his behavior and demeanor. His tactical decisions became more abstract and long-term focused, sometimes seeming to prioritize cosmic considerations over immediate human welfare. His interactions with other hunters became more distant and formal, as if he were viewing them from a perspective that diminished their individual significance. Most troubling of all, he began making references to future events and cosmic developments that suggested knowledge beyond anything obtainable through conventional means. When she confronted him about these changes, Gehrman found himself unable to adequately explain his experiences or the source of his enhanced awareness. The cosmic knowledge he had gained was inextricably linked to forms of consciousness that could not be translated into ordinary human language, making meaningful communication about his condition virtually impossible. His attempts to describe the moon presence's offer and its implications only served to increase her concerns about his mental state and judgment. The situation deteriorated further when other workshop hunters began reporting their own encounters with cosmic entities. Unlike Gehrman's experience with the moon presence, these contacts often involve beings with distinctly malevolent intentions, that sought to corrupt or control human consciousness for purposes that remained obscure but clearly threatening. Several hunters disappeared entirely after reporting strange dreams or unusual sensory experiences, while others returned from routine operations, exhibiting signs of mental instability or supernatural corruption. The workshop found itself facing a crisis that conventional training and procedures were completely inadequate to address. The cosmic entities making contact with their personnel operated according to principles that transcended normal understanding of space, time, and causality, making traditional defensive measures meaningless. Moreover, the enhanced capabilities that cosmic contact sometimes provided made it difficult to determine whether affected individuals represented assets or threats to organizational security. Gehrman realized that his decision regarding the Moon Presence's offer would have implications extending far beyond his personal circumstances. If he accepted cosmic patronage, he would be establishing a precedent that might encourage other hunters to seek similar arrangements with entities whose motivations and methods remained fundamentally unknowable. If he rejected the offer, he might be forgoing humanity's best opportunity to develop effective defenses against cosmic threats that conventional methods could not address. The weight of this decision was compounded by his growing awareness of the true scope of the cosmic conflict affecting Gehrman. The beast scourge was not an isolated phenomenon, but rather part of a vast supernatural war between cosmic entities whose struggles played out across multiple dimensions and temporal scales. Humanity's role in this conflict was that of unwilling pawns whose consciousness and physical forms could be reshaped to serve various cosmic purposes. Chapter 5. The Faustian Bargain. The decision that would forever seal Gehrman's fate came not in a moment of careful deliberation, but during a crisis that demanded immediate action. A massive beast outbreak had erupted in Old Gehrman, transforming the entire district into a nightmare landscape where twisted creatures hunted terrified civilians through streets slick with blood and worse things. The workshop's conventional response protocols proved utterly inadequate against the scale and intensity of the threat. Gehrman stood at the observation post overlooking the burning district, watching helplessly as his hunters fought desperately against overwhelming odds. Lady Maria led a team, attempting to evacuate civilians from the cathedral district, but beast packs were systematically hunting down refugees and cutting off escape routes. Henrikik coordinated defensive positions around key infrastructure, but the transformed creatures seemed to anticipate every tactical decision and counter every strategic move. Most disturbing of all was the organized nature of the assault. These were not random beast transformations driven by blood corruption, but coordinated attacks executed with intelligence and purpose that suggested external direction. Something was commanding the beasts, guiding their movements, and maximizing their effectiveness against human defenders. As he watched another evacuation convoy get overrun by a pack of particularly savage cleric beasts, Gehrman felt the Moon Presence's attention, focusing on his consciousness. The cosmic entity did not communicate through words or images, but rather through direct transmission of awareness and understanding that bypassed ordinary sensory channels entirely. The message was clear: this attack was being orchestrated by rival cosmic entities as a demonstration of power and a test of humanity's defensive capabilities. The beast transformations were being accelerated and directed through cosmic influences that operated on frequencies beyond human perception. Conventional hunting methods could not address threats that originated from dimensional spaces where physical laws functioned according to alien principles. However, the Moon Presence offered immediate assistance that could turn the tide of battle, enhanced weapons that could strike across dimensional barriers, tactical awareness that could predict enemy movements before they manifested in physical space, and supernatural resilience that would allow human defenders to survive encounters that would normally prove fatal. The price was formal acceptance of the Moon Presence's patronage, an agreement to serve its long-term objectives in the cosmic conflict. Gehrman would become the focal point for a new form of human-cosmic cooperation, serving as both translator and intermediary between human consciousness and cosmic awareness. His enhanced capabilities would be shared with selected hunters who demonstrated appropriate psychological compatibility and tactical value. Gehrman found himself with no real choice. The immediate threat to civilian lives outweighed abstract concerns about cosmic manipulation and long-term consequences. He accepted the moon presence's offer, feeling cosmic energies flow through his consciousness and reshape his fundamental relationship with reality. The transformation was immediate and profound. His perception expanded to encompass multiple dimensional layers simultaneously, revealing the cosmic infrastructure underlying apparently mundane physical events. The beast attacks were visible as energy patterns extending across dimensional boundaries, directed by intelligence nodes that existed in spaces adjacent to, but separate from ordinary reality. Armed with this enhanced awareness, Gehrman could predict beast movements before they occurred and identify vulnerabilities in their cosmic command structure. He directed workshop forces with supernatural precision, guiding them to strike at dimensional weak points that would disrupt enemy coordination and create tactical advantages that conventional analysis could never have revealed. The battle for Old Gehrman was won, but the victory came at costs that would not become apparent until much later. The moon presence's assistance had saved countless lives and demonstrated capabilities that opened entirely new possibilities for supernatural defense, but it had also established a precedent that would fundamentally alter the nature of human existence in ways that Gehrman could not have anticipated. The most immediate change was in Gehrman's relationship with the physical world. His enhanced cosmic awareness created a persistent sense of existing simultaneously in multiple dimensions, making ordinary human activities feel hollow and insubstantial. Food lost its taste, sleep brought no rest, and conversations with colleagues seemed to echo across vast distances, despite taking place in the same room. More troubling was the gradual erosion of his emotional connections to the people and places he had devoted his life to protecting. The cosmic perspective that allowed him to perceive threats across dimensional boundaries also made individual human lives seem insignificant when viewed against the vast scales of space and time on which cosmic entities operated. He found himself making tactical decisions based on abstract strategic considerations rather than immediate human welfare, a shift that disturbed his closest associates, even as it improved operational effectiveness. Lady Maria confronted him about these changes during a quiet moment after the old Gehrman crisis had been contained. She had known him for years, had learned hunting techniques from him, had fought beside him in countless dangerous situations. The man she now saw bore his physical appearance, but seemed to be observing the world from an impossible distance, as if he were looking down at humanity from heights that rendered individual people invisible. "You're not the same person," she said simply, her aristocratic bearing unable to entirely mask the pain in her voice. "Something fundamental has changed in you, and I fear we're losing the man who taught us what it means to be hunters." Gehrman wanted to explain the cosmic forces that were reshaping human consciousness, the vast supernatural conflicts that made their local hunting operations seem like minor skirmishes in wars, whose ultimate outcomes would be determined by entities beyond human comprehension. He wanted to describe the enhanced awareness that allowed him to perceive threats and opportunities invisible to ordinary human consciousness, the tactical advantages that cosmic patronage provided in defending humanity against supernatural corruption. But the words would not come. The cosmic knowledge he had gained was inextricably linked to forms of consciousness that could not be translated into ordinary human language. Any attempt to communicate his enhanced understanding only served to highlight the growing gap between his transformed awareness and the limited perspectives of those who remained purely human. Instead, he found himself offering reassurances that felt hollow even as he spoke them. He was still committed to protecting humanity, still dedicated to the workshop's mission, still the same person who had devoted his life to developing techniques and strategies for supernatural defense. The cosmic influences were tools, not masters, enhancing his capabilities rather than controlling his decisions. Lady Maria listened to these explanations with obvious skepticism. Her aristocratic training having taught her to recognize deception and self-deception in all their subtle forms. She could see that he believed what he was saying, but she could also see that his understanding of concepts like humanity, protection, and dedication had been fundamentally altered by whatever cosmic forces he had encountered. The conversation ended without resolution, but it marked the beginning of a gradual estrangement between Gehrman and the hunters who had once looked to him as both teacher and leader. His tactical guidance remained valuable. His enhanced awareness continued to provide strategic advantages, but the personal bonds that had held the workshop community together began to weaken as his cosmic transformation progressed. Chapter 6. The Birth of the Hunter's Dream. The Moon Presence's next communication came during the depths of winter, when Gehrman's streets lay buried under snow that muffled the sounds of hunting operations and created an atmosphere of unnatural quiet throughout the city. Gehrman was working alone in the workshop's main armory, performing maintenance on weapons that had been damaged during recent beast encounters, when cosmic awareness suddenly expanded to encompass a realm of existence that transcended ordinary physical space. He found himself standing in a place that defied conventional description, not quite a location in any meaningful sense, but rather a convergence of possibility and intention that had been shaped by cosmic will into something resembling a familiar environment. The landscape bore superficial similarities to places he had known in the waking world. Gardens with pathways, winding between flowering shrubs, Victorian architecture that echoed Gehrman's Gothic sensibilities, workshop spaces equipped with tools and weapons. Yet everything in this realm possessed an otherworldly quality that marked it as fundamentally separate from ordinary reality. The flowers bloomed with colors that had no names in human language, their petals seeming to exist in more dimensions than normal geometry could accommodate. The buildings cast shadows that fell in directions that defied any conceivable light source, their windows reflecting scenes from places and times that bore no relationship to their immediate surroundings. The Moon Presence manifested in this space as a towering figure whose form shifted continuously between organic and geometric configurations, its presence radiating awareness that encompassed multiple temporal streams simultaneously. When it communicated, the information arrived as direct transmission of understanding that bypassed normal sensory channels entirely. This realm, the entity explained, was the hunter's dream, a pocket dimension that existed adjacent to, but separate from ordinary reality, created specifically to serve as a training ground and sanctuary for hunters engaged in cosmic-level supernatural defense. The familiar elements from the waking world had been incorporated to provide psychological comfort and operational continuity for human consciousness that might otherwise be overwhelmed by purely alien environments. The dream's primary function was to serve as a testing and development facility for hunters who demonstrated potential for cosmic-level awareness and capability. Selected individuals would be brought here during sleep states, where they could undergo training and evaluation processes that would be impossible in the physical world. Death within the dream would not result in permanent termination, but rather return to a starting state that allowed for repeated attempts at challenging scenarios. This resurrection system would allow hunters to develop skills and knowledge through trial and error without the permanent consequences that normally accompanied failure in supernatural combat. They could face cosmic-level threats, learn from their mistakes, and gradually develop the enhanced awareness necessary for effective defense against entities that operated beyond normal human comprehension. Gehrman would serve as the dream's host and primary instructor, sharing his cosmic-enhanced knowledge with selected hunters, while providing guidance and support during their development process. His transformed consciousness made him uniquely qualified to serve as an intermediary between human and cosmic awareness, translating cosmic concepts into forms that human minds could process and integrate. The Moon Presence emphasized that this arrangement was intended as a partnership rather than a master-servant relationship. Gehrman would retain his autonomy and decision-making authority within the dream's boundaries, determining which hunters to accept for training and how to structure their development programs. The cosmic entity would provide resources and enhanced capabilities but would not interfere with day-to-day operations unless specifically requested to do so. However, certain constraints would apply to ensure the dream's effectiveness and security. Gehrman would need to remain within the dream's boundaries during active operational periods, maintaining the dimensional stability necessary for the resurrection system to function properly. His physical presence in the waking world would become increasingly limited as his consciousness became more deeply integrated with the dream's cosmic infrastructure. As the moon presence outlined these arrangements, Gehrman began to understand the true scope of what was being proposed. The hunter's dream represented far more than a simple training facility. It was an ambitious attempt to create a new form of human cosmic cooperation that could fundamentally alter humanity's relationship with supernatural threats. Rather than remaining passive victims of cosmic manipulation, humans could become active participants in cosmic affairs, developing the awareness and capabilities necessary to defend themselves, while contributing to larger cosmic objectives. The potential benefits were enormous. Hunters trained in the dream would possess capabilities far beyond anything achievable through conventional methods, allowing them to address threats that currently required cosmic intervention to counter effectively. The resurrection system would dramatically reduce the casualties associated with supernatural defense, allowing experienced hunters to remain active indefinitely while accumulating knowledge and skills that could be passed on to successive generations. Yet, Gehrman also recognized the personal costs that accepting this role would entail. Serving as the dream's host would require him to abandon his normal human existence, cutting ties with the physical world and the people who had given his life meaning and purpose. He would become a permanent resident of a realm that existed outside ordinary time and space, watching generations of hunters pass through his training programs while remaining frozen in a state of eternal service. The moon presence seemed to understand his hesitation and offered additional inducements designed to address his concerns. The dream would be configured to include recreations of people and places that held emotional significance for him, providing psychological anchors that would help maintain his human identity despite the cosmic transformation. Lady Maria, Henrikek, Dura, and other workshop colleagues could be preserved in forms that would allow for meaningful interaction and companionship. Moreover, the work itself would be deeply meaningful and aligned with his core values and objectives. Training hunters to defend humanity against cosmic threats represented the ultimate evolution of his life's work, allowing him to share his knowledge and experience with potentially unlimited numbers of students. The enhanced capabilities provided by cosmic patronage would allow him to accomplish far more than would ever be possible through purely human methods. The decision required careful consideration of factors that transcended normal human experience and understanding. Gehrman found himself weighing immediate personal costs against abstract benefits that might accrue over temporal scales beyond human comprehension. The moon presence waited patiently for his response, its alien consciousness radiating a sense of cosmic timescales that made human urgency seem trivial and meaningless. Eventually, Gehrman reached a conclusion based on the same principles that had guided his actions throughout his hunting career. The protection of innocent life took precedence over personal considerations, and the greatest good for the greatest number justified significant personal sacrifice. If the hunter's dream could produce defenders capable of protecting humanity against threats that conventional methods could not address, then his personal transformation was a price worth paying. His acceptance of the moon presence's offer triggered immediate changes in both his consciousness and his relationship with physical reality. The dream began manifesting around him with increasing solidity and detail, incorporating elements from his memories and experiences to create an environment that felt familiar despite its otherworldly nature. The workshop's tools and weapons appeared in pristine condition, arranged according to his preferences and enhanced with capabilities that reflected cosmic-level understanding of supernatural combat principles. Chapter 7. The First Hunters of the Dream. The hunter's dream's first test came sooner than either Gehrman or the moon presence had anticipated. A catastrophic beast outbreak in the lower districts of Gehrman had overwhelmed conventional hunting forces, creating a crisis that threatened to spread throughout the entire city. Worse still, the transformed creatures exhibited intelligence and coordination that suggested external direction by cosmic entities hostile to human survival. Gehrman found himself facing the challenge of identifying and recruiting hunters suitable for dream training, while simultaneously developing operational procedures for an entirely new form of supernatural defense. The selection criteria were complex and often counterintuitive. Conventional hunting skills and experience, while valuable, were less important than psychological flexibility and capacity for expanded awareness. The first candidate to enter the dream was a veteran hunter named Ludwig, whose reputation for innovation and adaptability had made him one of the workshop's most effective field operatives. His initial reaction to the dream environment was fascination rather than fear, immediately recognizing the enhanced capabilities that cosmic-level training could provide. He adapted quickly to the resurrection system, using multiple death and return cycles to develop tactics for dealing with threats that would have been impossible to survive in the physical world. Ludwig's success encouraged Gehrman to expand the recruitment program, bringing additional hunters into the dream for evaluation and training. Each new arrival required individual attention and customized instruction, as the psychological challenges of cosmic-level awareness affected different personalities in different ways. Some hunters thrived in the enhanced environment, developing capabilities that exceeded their wildest expectations. Others struggled with the existential implications of operating outside normal space and time, requiring extensive support and guidance to maintain psychological stability. The most challenging cases were those hunters who possessed the technical skills necessary for cosmic-level operations, but lacked the emotional resilience required to handle expanded awareness without losing their essential humanity. These individuals often developed god complexes or messianic delusions, viewing themselves as superior beings, destined to reshape human civilization according to their enhanced understanding. Gehrman learned to identify these problematic personality types during the early stages of training, implementing screening procedures that could predict psychological compatibility before irreversible transformations occurred. The selection process became increasingly sophisticated as more hunters passed through the dream, developing into a comprehensive evaluation system that assessed not just combat capability, but also ethical orientation, emotional stability, and capacity for maintaining human empathy despite cosmic awareness. The training programs themselves evolved through trial and error, incorporating lessons learned from both successful and failed cases. Gehrman discovered that hunters needed gradual exposure to cosmic concepts rather than immediate immersion in expanded awareness, allowing their consciousness to adapt slowly to perspectives that would otherwise prove overwhelming. The dream's resurrection system provided opportunities for repeated practice with dangerous techniques, but psychological preparation proved equally important for long-term success. Combat training in the dream involved opponents and scenarios that would have been impossible to replicate in the physical world. Hunters faced cosmic-level entities in controlled environments where failure meant resurrection rather than permanent death, allowing them to develop confidence and skills through direct experience with threats they would eventually encounter in real operations. The enhanced weapons and tools available in the dream provided capabilities that conventional equipment could not match, but learning to use these cosmic enhanced items effectively required extensive practice and instruction. Perhaps most importantly, hunters learned to maintain their human identity and values despite exposure to cosmic perspectives that could easily lead to existential detachment and moral relativism. Gehrman emphasized that enhanced capabilities came with enhanced responsibilities, and that the ultimate purpose of cosmic-level hunting was to protect ordinary humans who remained vulnerable to supernatural threats. The first major field operation, involving dream-trained hunters, was a response to the beast crisis that had originally prompted the dream's creation. Ludwig led a team of 5 cosmic-enhanced hunters against organized beast packs that conventional forces had been unable to counter effectively. The results exceeded even Gehrman's optimistic expectations. The enhanced hunters moved with supernatural speed and precision, employing tactics that exploited dimensional vulnerabilities invisible to ordinary human perception. The beasts, despite their cosmic-level coordination and intelligence, proved unable to adapt to opponents who operated according to principles that transcended normal physical limitations. The crisis was resolved within hours, rather than the weeks that conventional methods would have required, and civilian casualties were minimized through tactical precision that conventional hunting could never have achieved. News of this success spread quickly through Gehrman's hunting community, generating intense interest in the new training methods and capabilities that the dream apparently provided. However, Gehrman found himself reluctant to expand the program too rapidly, recognizing that each new hunter represented a significant investment of time and attention, and that hasty recruitment could lead to inadequate preparation and dangerous failures. The moon presence supported this cautious approach, explaining that the dream's resources, while vast by human standards, were not unlimited. Each hunter required ongoing cosmic energy expenditure to maintain their enhanced capabilities, and the dream's dimensional stability could be threatened by excessive demands on its infrastructure. Quality control was essential to ensure that cosmic investments produced hunters capable of meaningful contributions to supernatural defense. This period also saw the development of administrative systems and operational procedures that would govern the dream's long-term function. Gehrman established protocols for hunter evaluation, training progression, field deployment, and performance review that balanced individual development needs with operational requirements. The systems were designed to function automatically once established, reducing the need for his constant oversight and allowing him to focus on strategic planning and advanced instruction. The hunters themselves began forming a community within the dream, sharing experiences and insights that enhanced their collective effectiveness. Veterans mentored newcomers, development specialists worked with those struggling with specific aspects of cosmic awareness, and field operatives shared tactical innovations that improved operational success rates. This community aspect proved crucial for maintaining morale and preventing the isolation that could result from extended residence in a realm separate from ordinary human society. However, not all aspects of the dream's development proceeded smoothly. Several hunters experienced psychological breakdowns that required their removal from the program, and others developed obsessive behaviors that interfered with their operational effectiveness. Most troubling were cases where hunters became convinced that they had transcended human limitations entirely and no longer needed to concern themselves with the welfare of ordinary people. These failures forced Gehrman to develop more sophisticated screening and monitoring procedures, implementing psychological evaluation systems that could identify problematic tendencies before they became serious problems. The dream's resurrection system, while providing invaluable training opportunities, also created risks of casual attitudes toward death and violence that could prove dangerous when applied in the physical world, where consequences were permanent. Chapter 8. The Weight of Endless Time. As months passed in the waking world, Gehrman began to understand the true nature of his transformation and the price he had paid for cosmic patronage. Time flowed differently within the hunter's dream, moments stretching into hours, while days collapsed into instants, according to principles that defied human understanding. He found himself experiencing a form of temporal displacement that made meaningful connection with linear time increasingly difficult. The hunters who passed through his training programs provided some anchor to normal temporal flow, their arrivals and departures marking progression that might otherwise have been imperceptible. Yet even these interactions took on a dreamlike quality, as if he were observing them from a great distance, despite being directly involved in their instruction and development. The enhanced awareness that made him effective as a teacher also created a sense of existential isolation that no amount of social interaction could alleviate. His memories of life before the dream began to blur and fade, not through normal forgetfulness, but through a process that seemed to substitute cosmic awareness for human recollection. He could remember facts and events with perfect clarity, but the emotional resonance that had once given these memories meaning became increasingly inaccessible. Lady Maria's face remained vivid in his mind, but the feelings of friendship and respect that had characterized their relationship felt like abstract concepts rather than lived experiences. The moon presence had warned him that cosmic transformation involved psychological costs, but the reality proved more profound and disturbing than he had anticipated. He was becoming something that retained human form and basic human psychology, while losing the essential human qualities that made existence meaningful and satisfying. Enhanced capabilities came at the cost of emotional connection, expanded awareness at the price of personal fulfillment. The hunters he trained remained unaware of his internal struggle, seeing only the knowledgeable instructor and capable mentor who guided their development through challenging cosmic concepts. His teaching methods remained effective, his tactical advice continued to prove valuable, and his personal example inspired dedication and achievement among his students. Yet he felt increasingly like an actor playing a role rather than a person engaging in meaningful work. This existential crisis deepened as he began to understand the permanent nature of his situation. The moon presence had spoken of partnership and cooperation, but the reality was something closer to benevolent imprisonment. His consciousness had become so thoroughly integrated with the dream's cosmic infrastructure that separation was no longer possible without destroying both himself and the realm he now maintained through his presence. The hunters who graduated from his training programs and returned to the waking world carried pieces of his knowledge and experience with them, extending his influence far beyond the dream's boundaries. Yet this connection felt hollow and unsatisfying, providing none of the genuine human interaction that he increasingly craved. He was touching countless lives while remaining isolated from meaningful relationship, teaching others to preserve their humanity while losing his own. The dream itself began to reflect his psychological state, incorporating elements that revealed his growing melancholy and sense of loss. Gardens that had once bloomed with impossible beauty became overgrown and wild, their exotic flowers taking on forms that suggested decay and abandonment. The workshop areas remained functional, but developed a museum-like quality, as if they were preserving techniques and knowledge from a bygone era, rather than supporting active operations. Most disturbing was the appearance of a figure that resembled Maria, seemingly created by the dream in response to his emotional needs. This manifestation possessed her appearance and mannerisms, could engage in conversations that felt natural and meaningful, and provided companionship that partially alleviated his isolation. Yet he knew it was ultimately an illusion, a projection of his own memories and desires, rather than a genuine person capable of independent thought and feeling. The presence of this dream Maria created a new form of torment, offering the appearance of human connection while highlighting the fundamental emptiness of his situation. Conversations with her felt simultaneously comforting and heartbreaking, providing temporary relief from loneliness while reinforcing his awareness of how far he had drifted from authentic human experience. Gehrman found himself spending hours in contemplation of choices that could no longer be changed, and consequences that extended far beyond what he had originally understood. The hunters he trained went on to accomplish remarkable feats, protecting humanity against threats that conventional methods could never have addressed. Yet their successes felt abstract and distant, providing intellectual satisfaction without emotional fulfillment. The moon presence occasionally manifested to check on the dream's operation and his psychological state, expressing what seemed to be genuine concern for his welfare within the limitations of its alien nature. These interactions provided temporary respite from isolation, but also reinforced his awareness of how thoroughly his existence had been transformed. The cosmic entity viewed his condition as successful adaptation to enhanced awareness, unable to comprehend the human elements that had been lost in the process. During these communications, Gehrman began to understand that his situation was not unique. The moon presence had created similar arrangements with other individuals throughout cosmic history, establishing training facilities and sanctuary realms that served cosmic objectives while providing enhanced capabilities to selected members of various species. Most of these partnerships had eventually ended through the host's psychological deterioration or voluntary termination of their cosmic connection. This knowledge provided little comfort, confirming that his growing despair was a predictable outcome rather than a personal failure or temporary adjustment difficulty. The cosmic perspective that made him effective as a hunter-trainer also made human emotional needs seem trivial and meaningless, creating an irreconcilable conflict between his enhanced awareness and his fundamental nature. The hunters passing through his training programs began to notice changes in his demeanor and teaching style, though few understood the source of his increasing melancholy. Veterans, who returned for advanced instruction, commented on his growing detachment and the sadness that seemed to permeate his interactions. New arrivals often found him staring into distances that existed in dimensions beyond normal human perception, lost in contemplations that transcended ordinary concerns about immediate challenges and objectives. Yet his effectiveness as an instructor remained undiminished, even as his personal satisfaction with the work continued to decline. The cosmic knowledge he had gained made him uniquely qualified to prepare hunters for challenges they would face in defending humanity against supernatural threats. His sacrifice had produced genuine benefits that would continue protecting innocent lives long after his own situation became unbearable. This realization created a complex emotional state where pride in his achievements coexisted with profound regret about their personal costs. He had accomplished everything he had set out to achieve and more, creating defensive capabilities that exceeded his wildest original ambitions. Yet the price had been the loss of everything that had made those achievements personally meaningful, leaving him with success that felt hollow and victory that provided no satisfaction. Chapter 9. The Doll's Creation. In his growing desperation for meaningful companionship, Gehrman made a decision that would fundamentally alter the dream's nature and create new forms of tragedy within its otherworldly boundaries. Drawing upon cosmic knowledge and enhanced awareness that his transformation had provided, he began the complex process of creating a being that could serve as both companion and assistant within the dream's unique environment. The creation was not a simple matter of cosmic will or enhanced capability. It required careful integration of multiple forms of awareness and consciousness, combining elements of human psychology with cosmic principles in ways that would produce a stable and functional personality. Gehrman used his memories of Lady Maria as a template, but the process involved far more than simple replication or reconstruction. The resulting being, which he called simply the doll, possessed Maria's physical appearance and many of her personality traits, but existed as a fundamentally different type of consciousness. She was aware of her artificial nature and understood her role within the dream structure, yet possessed genuine emotions and independent thought that made interactions with her feel authentic and meaningful. The doll's primary function was to serve as an assistant and guide for hunters passing through the dream, providing support services that complemented Gehrman's instruction and training programs. She could enhance hunters' capabilities through mysterious processes that channeled their accumulated experiences into permanent improvements, allowing them to grow stronger and more skilled through their dream activities. However, her secondary function as Gehrman's companion proved more complex and problematic than he had anticipated. While she provided the social interaction that his isolation craved, she also served as a constant reminder of what he had lost and could never recover. Her presence highlighted the artificial nature of his current existence, while providing just enough human connection to prevent complete psychological breakdown. The doll understood her creator's psychological state with perfect clarity, recognizing both his need for companionship and the painful contradictions that her existence represented. She served willingly and effectively in her designated roles, providing comfort and assistance while maintaining awareness that her very presence was a form of beautiful torture for the man who had created her, out of loneliness and regret. Her interactions with visiting hunters revealed the depth and sophistication of her personality, demonstrating that Gehrman's creation had succeeded in producing genuine consciousness rather than mere simulation. She could form individual relationships with different hunters, adapting her communication style and support methods to meet their specific needs and personalities. Veterans who returned for advanced training often sought her out specifically, valuing her insights and assistance as much as Gehrman's formal instruction. Yet beneath her helpful demeanor, and genuine care for the hunters who passed through the dream, the doll harbored her own form of existential sadness. She was aware that her existence was contingent upon Gehrman's continued residence in the dream, understanding that his psychological deterioration threatened both her own survival and the continued operation of the entire facility. Her care for him was motivated by genuine affection, but also by the self-preservation instinct that had emerged as an unexpected aspect of her consciousness. The relationship between Gehrman and the doll developed into something that transcended simple creator-creation dynamics, becoming a complex emotional bond that provided both comfort and additional suffering for each participant. She offered him the human connection he desperately needed, while serving as a constant reminder of his inability to form authentic relationships with real people. He provided her with purpose and meaning while representing the cosmic forces that had created her artificial existence. Their conversations often focused on memories of the waking world and the people they had known before the dream's creation. The doll possessed access to Gehrman's memories of Maria, allowing her to discuss shared experiences and relationships with intimate knowledge, despite never having actually participated in them. These discussions provided Gehrman with opportunities to process his grief and loss, while creating new forms of pain through their inherently artificial nature. The doll's presence also affected the hunters who passed through the dream's training programs, providing them with an example of consciousness that existed outside normal human categories. Her obvious care for their welfare and genuine interest in their development helped maintain the human-focused orientation that Gehrman emphasized in his instruction, demonstrating that enhanced awareness did not necessarily require abandonment of empathy and compassion. Some hunters developed deep appreciation for the doll's assistance and insights, viewing her as a valuable mentor and guide whose artificial nature did not diminish the authenticity of her care and support. Others found her existence disturbing and unnerving, recognizing the profound loneliness and desperation that had motivated her creation. These varied reactions provided additional challenges for hunters learning to navigate cosmic-level awareness while maintaining their essential humanity. The doll's own perspective on these interactions revealed the complexity of her position within the dream's social structure. She valued her relationships with visiting hunters while understanding their temporary nature, knowing that successful graduates would return to the waking world and leave her behind. Her emotional investments in these relationships were genuine, but also inherently limited by the circumstances of her existence. As time continued its strange flow within the dream's boundaries, the relationship between Gehrman and the doll evolved into something approaching family, with elements of parent-child, teacher-student, and companion dynamics, blending into a unique form of connection that existed nowhere else in human or cosmic experience. They developed shared routines and traditions that provided structure and meaning within their eternal residence, creating small moments of normalcy within their extraordinary circumstances. Yet both remained aware that their relationship, however meaningful it had become, was ultimately a product of cosmic manipulation and artificial creation. The genuine affection they felt for each other was real, but it existed within a framework that had been imposed upon them by forces beyond their control or complete understanding. Their happiness, when it occurred, was always shadowed by awareness of the tragic circumstances that had made their connection possible. The doll often observed Gehrman during his periods of deepest melancholy, recognizing the signs that indicated his growing desire for escape from the endless cycle of training hunters and maintaining the dream's operation. She understood that his continued service was motivated more by duty and cosmic compulsion than by personal satisfaction or genuine desire, and she worried about the long-term sustainability of an arrangement that provided little fulfillment for its primary participant. Chapter 10. The Cycle of Hunters. As the hunter's dream established itself as a permanent fixture in the cosmic infrastructure surrounding Gehrman, a predictable rhythm emerged in the selection and training of hunters who would pass through its otherworldly boundaries. Each new arrival brought their own personality, skills, and psychological challenges, requiring Gehrman to adapt his instruction methods while maintaining the core principles that made dream training effective. The most successful hunters were often those who arrived with significant prior experience in supernatural combat, but remained flexible enough to embrace cosmic-level concepts that transcended their previous understanding. These individuals could build upon their existing skills while developing the expanded awareness necessary for addressing threats that conventional hunting methods could not counter effectively. However, some of the most memorable and ultimately effective hunters were complete novices who possessed psychological qualities that made them uniquely suited for cosmic-level training. Despite lacking conventional preparation, their lack of preconceived notions about supernatural combat allowed them to embrace dream-enhanced techniques without the mental barriers that sometimes limited more experienced hunters. Gehrman found himself serving as mentor, therapist, and spiritual guide for individuals whose personal circumstances varied dramatically, but who shared the common need for guidance in navigating awareness that transcended normal human experience. Each hunter's journey through the dream involved not just tactical training but also psychological development that would allow them to maintain their humanity while operating at cosmic levels of capability and understanding. The most challenging cases were hunters who arrived in the dream carrying severe psychological trauma from their experiences in the waking world. The beast scourge had created countless personal tragedies, leaving survivors with forms of mental and emotional damage that conventional treatment could not address. The dream's unique environment sometimes provided opportunities for healing that would have been impossible elsewhere, but it also created risks of psychological breakdown that required careful management. Gehrman learned to identify hunters who were struggling with trauma-related challenges, developing specialized training approaches that addressed their therapeutic needs, while building the skills necessary for effective supernatural combat. The dream's resurrection system proved valuable for these cases, allowing traumatized hunters to face their fears repeatedly until they developed confidence and control over their responses. The graduation process for successful hunters involved complex decisions about their readiness for field operations and their psychological stability under stress. Gehrman had to evaluate not just their combat capabilities, but also their likelihood of maintaining ethical standards and human empathy when operating with cosmic-enhanced awareness in the waking world. Some hunters required multiple cycles through the dream's training programs before achieving the balance of capability and stability necessary for graduation. Others demonstrated exceptional aptitude that allowed them to progress rapidly through advanced concepts and techniques. Each case required individual assessment and customized instruction that reflected Gehrman's growing understanding of how different personalities responded to cosmic transformation. The most rewarding aspects of his role involved witnessing the personal growth and development that successful hunters achieved through their dream experiences. Individuals who arrived broken and desperate often departed as confident and capable defenders of humanity, equipped with both enhanced abilities and deeper understanding of their purpose and responsibilities. Yet these successes were balanced by failures that created additional emotional burdens for Gehrman to bear. Hunters who proved psychologically incompatible with cosmic awareness sometimes experienced permanent mental damage that required their removal from the program. Others developed problematic attitudes or behaviors that made them unsuitable for field operations, despite their technical competence. The worst cases involved hunters who embraced cosmic awareness too completely, losing their connection to human values and concerns in favor of abstract cosmic objectives. These individuals often viewed ordinary humans as expendable resources in larger supernatural conflicts, developing god complexes that made them dangerous to the very people they were supposed to protect. Gehrman established screening procedures designed to identify these problematic tendencies before they became irreversible, but the process was imperfect and occasionally produced graduates who later caused problems in the waking world. Each such failure weighed heavily on his conscience, representing both a personal teaching failure and a threat to innocent lives that his actions had inadvertently created. The administrative aspects of managing the dream's operations became increasingly complex as more hunters passed through its programs and graduated to field assignments in the waking world. Gehrman found himself maintaining records and tracking systems that monitored graduate performance, while providing ongoing support for individuals who encountered difficulties during their transition back to normal reality. Some graduates maintained connections to the dream even after their formal training concluded, returning periodically for advanced instruction or consultation on particularly challenging cases. These ongoing relationships provided Gehrman with some sense of continuity and accomplishment, demonstrating that his work had produced lasting benefits that extended far beyond the dream's boundaries. However, other graduates disappeared entirely after their departure, leaving him uncertain about their fate and effectiveness in applying their dream-enhanced capabilities to real-world challenges. The cosmic nature of their training made conventional communication difficult, and the secrecy requirements that surrounded dream operations prevented open discussion of their activities. The doll's assistance proved invaluable in managing these complex relationships and administrative requirements. Her ability to maintain detailed records and provide emotional support for hunters struggling with various challenges complemented Gehrman's instruction and guidance, creating a comprehensive support system that addressed both technical and personal needs. Yet even successful operations and positive outcomes could not alleviate the fundamental isolation and existential emptiness that characterized Gehrman's existence within the dream. Each new group of hunters provided temporary distraction from his personal situation, but their eventual departure left him facing the same eternal cycle of instruction and solitude that defined his cosmic imprisonment. The moon presence's periodic communications revealed satisfaction with the dream's productivity and effectiveness, but offered no solutions for the psychological costs that its operation imposed upon its primary host. The cosmic entity viewed Gehrman's growing despair as an acceptable side effect of successful operations, understanding his emotional needs as abstract concerns that did not significantly impact the dream's strategic value. This callous attitude toward his welfare reinforced Gehrman's understanding that his relationship with the moon presence was fundamentally exploitative. Despite its ostensibly cooperative nature, he had been transformed into a tool for cosmic objectives, retained only as long as his functionality remained intact and his services continued to provide value. Chapter 11. The Hunt for Release. As centuries passed within the dream's distorted temporal flow, Gehrman's desire for escape from his cosmic imprisonment became an obsession that colored every aspect of his existence. The endless cycle of training hunters and maintaining the dream's operations had become a form of torture that combined meaningful work with complete personal isolation, creating a situation where he could never fully embrace his role or entirely reject its importance. His search for potential escape routes began with careful study of the cosmic principles that governed the dream's existence and his own connection to its infrastructure. The moon presence had integrated his consciousness so thoroughly with the realm's operational systems that separation seemed impossible without destroying both himself and the facility he maintained through his presence. Yet cosmic knowledge provided hints about theoretical possibilities for transformation or transcendence that might offer alternatives to eternal service. Other cosmic entities had different approaches to consciousness manipulation and dimensional engineering, suggesting that the moon presence's methods were not the only possible arrangements for human cosmic cooperation. The most promising possibility involved finding another individual capable of assuming his role as the dream's host, allowing him to transfer his responsibilities while preserving the facility's continued operation. This would require locating someone with the psychological flexibility necessary for cosmic transformation, combined with the teaching abilities needed to instruct visiting hunters effectively. However, the selection criteria for a replacement host were extraordinarily demanding. The individual would need to possess not just technical competence, but also the emotional resilience necessary to handle eternal isolation and the ethical commitment required to maintain the dream's human-focused orientation. Moreover, they would need to willingly accept a transformation that Gehrman himself had come to view as a form of beautiful damnation. His evaluation of graduating hunters revealed that few possessed the complete combination of qualities necessary for host duties. Most successful graduates were oriented toward field operations and active combat, lacking the temperament needed for extended instructional responsibilities. Those who demonstrated teaching aptitude often lacked the psychological resilience necessary for cosmic transformation, while individuals capable of handling expanded awareness frequently proved unsuitable for the patient instruction that dream operations required. The search for a suitable replacement became a secondary mission that influenced his training methods and evaluation criteria. Gehrman began paying special attention to hunters who demonstrated both exceptional capability and the kind of philosophical outlook that might survive cosmic transformation without losing essential human qualities. Yet he was careful not to actively recruit anyone for this role, understanding that the decision to accept such a burden had to be entirely voluntary to have any hope of success. The most promising candidate to emerge during this period was a hunter whose origins remained mysterious. Even after extensive interaction, this individual arrived in the dream with advanced capabilities that suggested prior cosmic contact, yet retained a humanity and compassion that had survived whatever transformations they had undergone. Their teaching abilities proved exceptional, and their psychological stability seemed capable of handling the isolation and existential challenges that cosmic awareness inevitably created. Yet when Gehrman carefully explored the possibility of transferring his responsibilities, the hunter's response revealed the fundamental cruelty of his situation. They understood perfectly what he was asking and why he was asking it, recognizing both his desperate need for escape and the tremendous value that the dream's operations provided for humanity's defense against cosmic threats. Their gentle but firm refusal was based on the same ethical principles that had originally motivated Gehrman's acceptance of the Moon Presence's offer. The greater good required that someone maintain the dream's operations, and transferring that burden to another person would simply create a new victim of cosmic manipulation. The only ethical solution was for Gehrman to continue his service until a genuinely voluntary replacement could be found or alternative arrangements could be developed. This conversation forced Gehrman to confront the reality that his search for escape was itself a form of moral compromise. His desire for freedom was understandable and even justified, but achieving it through manipulation or coercion of another person would violate the very principles that had made him effective as a hunter and teacher. He was trapped not just by cosmic forces, but also by his own ethical standards, which prevented him from pursuing release through means that would create new suffering. The recognition of this additional layer of imprisonment created a new phase in his psychological development, one characterized by a kind of resigned acceptance that coexisted with continuing hope for eventual liberation. He continued training hunters with full dedication, while privately exploring theoretical possibilities for escape that would not require transferring his burden to another person. His studies of cosmic principles revealed that the Moon Presence's current arrangement was not necessarily permanent, despite its apparently eternal nature. Cosmic entities operated according to vast temporal cycles that made human lifespans seem like brief moments, and their priorities and methods evolved over time. Scales that transcended ordinary understanding, changes in cosmic politics, or strategic objectives might eventually create opportunities for renegotiating his role or finding alternative arrangements. Moreover, the dream's success in producing effective hunters had created a substantial population of cosmic-enhanced individuals operating in the waking world. These graduates represented accumulated knowledge and capability that might eventually reduce the need for centralized training facilities, allowing the dream's operations to be scaled back or restructured in ways that would require less intensive host involvement. The Dole observed his renewed research efforts with understanding and concern, recognizing both his need for hope and the unlikely nature of the solutions he was pursuing. Her own existence was tied to his presence in the dream, making her a stakeholder in his continuing imprisonment, despite her genuine care for his welfare. This created complex emotional dynamics, where her support for his search for freedom was balanced by awareness that his success would likely result in her own termination. Their discussions of potential escape scenarios became a form of shared fantasy that provided psychological relief without realistic expectation of implementation. The doll's artificial nature allowed her to engage with these conversations without the emotional investment that would have made them painful. while her genuine concern for Gehrman's welfare made her participation meaningful and supportive. Chapter 12. The Pale Blood Hunt. The arrival of a particular hunter marked a turning point in both the dream's history and Gehrman's long imprisonment. This individual came bearing unusual circumstances and mysterious origins, carrying traces of cosmic influence that suggested involvement in events beyond ordinary supernatural combat. Unlike previous hunters who had arrived seeking training or refuge, this newcomer seemed to be pursuing specific objectives that extended beyond simple beast hunting. Their initial interactions revealed capabilities and knowledge that defied conventional explanation. The hunter demonstrated fighting techniques that incorporated cosmic principles despite apparent lack of formal dream training, suggesting either natural aptitude for expanded awareness or prior contact with cosmic entities through unknown channels. More intriguingly, they carried blood echoes that resonated with cosmic frequencies in ways that suggested direct exposure to Great One influences. Gehrman's enhanced awareness allowed him to perceive the cosmic patterns surrounding this mysterious hunter, revealing connections to events and entities that operated at the highest levels of supernatural influence. The individual was not simply another candidate for training, but rather a key participant in cosmic conflicts, whose resolution might fundamentally alter the supernatural environment surrounding Gehrman. The hunter's quest for pale blood represented something far more significant than a simple search for rare materials or supernatural substances. Pale blood itself was a cosmic phenomenon that served as a bridge between different levels of reality, allowing consciousness to transition between mortal and transcendent states, without the gradual transformation process that normally characterized cosmic awareness development. This revelation created both hope and fear in Gehrman's cosmic enhanced consciousness. If the hunter succeeded in their pale blood quest, they might achieve a form of cosmic transcendence that could disrupt the current arrangements governing the dream's operations. Such disruption might create opportunities for renegotiating his role, or finding alternative arrangements for maintaining humanity's supernatural defenses. However, the cosmic forces involved in pale blood phenomena operated according to principles that transcended even the moon presence's understanding and control. Success in the hunter's quest might result in outcomes that were beneficial, neutral, or catastrophically harmful to existing arrangements, with no reliable way to predict or influence the results. Gehrman found himself in the unprecedented position of training someone whose ultimate success might free him from cosmic imprisonment while potentially destroying everything he had worked to create and protect. The ethical implications were staggering, forcing him to balance his personal desire for liberation against his responsibility to preserve the dream's defensive capabilities and protect the hunters who depended upon its operations. The training he provided to this mysterious hunter was the most comprehensive and advanced instruction he had ever offered, incorporating cosmic knowledge and techniques that he had previously reserved for only the most exceptional candidates. The individual's rapid progress and intuitive understanding of complex concepts confirmed their potential for achieving genuinely cosmic-level awareness and capability. Yet beneath the technical instruction, Gehrman found himself engaging in more personal and philosophical discussions than he had allowed himself with previous hunters. The possibility that this individual might represent his path to freedom created an emotional investment that made their relationship more meaningful and psychologically complex than the professional mentoring that characterized his other training activities. The doll observed these developments with her characteristic insight and concern, recognizing the unprecedented nature of the situation while understanding the emotional stakes involved for both participants. Her support for Gehrman's engagement with the pale blood hunter was balanced by awareness that their success might result in her own termination, along with the dream's dissolution. As the hunter's training progressed, signs began appearing that suggested cosmic forces were responding to their presence and development. The dream's environment showed subtle changes in its otherworldly atmosphere, with familiar elements taking on new resonances and unknown features beginning to manifest in areas that had remained stable for centuries. The moon presence's communications revealed increasing interest in the situation, though the cosmic entity's alien perspective made its intentions and concerns difficult to interpret. It seemed to view the pale-bled hunter as both an opportunity and a threat, recognizing potential benefits while expressing apprehension about developments beyond its control or prediction. The hunter's gradual acquisition of cosmic awareness proceeded differently from the transformation processes that Gehrman had undergone or observed in other cases. Rather than the gradual integration of enhanced consciousness with existing human awareness, this individual seemed to be developing entirely new forms of perception and understood both mortal and cosmic categories. Their conversations revealed perspectives on existence and consciousness that challenged even Gehrman's cosmic enhanced understanding, suggesting access to forms of knowledge that operated according to principles beyond current cosmic civilization. The individual was becoming something genuinely unprecedented, a bridge between different orders of existence that might represent evolution toward entirely new forms of consciousness. This realization created both excitement and terror in Gehrman's awareness. The possibility of transcendence beyond current cosmic arrangements offered hope for liberation from his eternal imprisonment, but it also threatened to render meaningless everything he understood about existence, consciousness, and the cosmic forces that had shaped his transformation. The hunter's final preparation involved access to cosmic knowledge and capabilities that Gehrman had never previously shared with any student. These were secrets that the moon presence had revealed during his initial transformation, insights into the fundamental nature of reality and consciousness that could only be safely transmitted to individuals capable of transcendent awareness. As the moment approached for the hunter's departure from the dream and engagement with the cosmic forces that surrounded the pale-blood phenomenon, Gehrman found himself experiencing emotions that had been dormant for centuries. Hope and fear combined with anticipation and dread, creating psychological states that reminded him of his original humanity, while highlighting how far he had traveled from ordinary human experience. The final conversation between mentor and student carried weight that extended far beyond their individual circumstances. Both understood that the outcomes of the hunter's quest would determine not just their personal fates, but also the future of human cosmic relationships and the continued existence of the defensive arrangements that had protected humanity against supernatural threats. Chapter 13. The Final Hunt. The moment of decision arrived with cosmic inevitability, as the mysterious hunter completed their training and stood ready to pursue the pale blood that would determine the fate of the dream and everyone connected to its operations. Gehrman faced a choice that encapsulated all the tragedy and complexity of his cosmic imprisonment. He could either facilitate the hunter's quest, potentially gaining his freedom at the cost of destroying the protective arrangements he had devoted his existence to maintaining, or he could attempt to prevent their departure, preserving the dream's operations, while condemning himself to eternal servitude. The weight of this decision was compounded by his understanding that the hunter had developed genuine cosmic transcendence capabilities that made them potentially more powerful than Gehrman himself. Any attempt to prevent their departure would likely result in his own destruction, while facilitating their quest might achieve the same result through different means. Either choice involved accepting the possibility of his own termination, while serving larger purposes that extended beyond his personal survival or liberation. The moon presence's final communication revealed the cosmic entity's own uncertainty about the situation's resolution. Even beings operating at cosmic levels of awareness could not predict or control the outcomes of genuine transcendence events, making the hunter's quest a source of both opportunity and existential threat to established cosmic arrangements. Gehrman's choice, when it finally came, reflected the same principles that had guided his actions throughout his hunting career and cosmic imprisonment. The protection of humanity took precedence over personal considerations, and the greater good justified significant personal sacrifice. If the hunter's success would ultimately benefit human civilization, then he would facilitate their quest, regardless of the personal costs involved. The final confrontation between teacher and student took place in the dream's garden, surrounded by the otherworldly flora that had bloomed for centuries under cosmic influence. The battle that ensued was unlike any previous combat that had occurred within the dream's boundaries, involving techniques and capabilities that transcended ordinary supernatural fighting. and entered realms of pure cosmic conflict. Gehrman fought with all the skill and knowledge that centuries of cosmic enhancement had provided, wielding his signature burial blade with deadly precision while employing tactics that exploited the dream's unique properties. Yet, his opponent had achieved a level of transcendent awareness that allowed them to counter every technique and anticipate every strategy, demonstrating capabilities that exceeded even cosmic-enhanced human limitations. The battle's outcome was predetermined by the cosmic forces involved, but its conduct revealed the depths of skill and dedication that both participants had achieved through their respective paths of development. Gehrman's defeat was inevitable, but it was accomplished with honor and dignity that preserved his essential character despite the centuries of cosmic transformation he had undergone. As consciousness faded from his cosmic-enhanced awareness, Gehrman experienced a moment of clarity that revealed the true scope of what he had accomplished through his sacrifice. The hunters he had trained had indeed protected humanity against supernatural threats that conventional methods could never have addressed. The dream's operations had created defensive capabilities that would continue operating even after his termination, ensuring that his sacrifice would produce lasting benefits for human civilization. The transcendent hunter who had defeated him represented the ultimate evolution of everything he had worked to achieve, a being capable of operating at cosmic levels while preserving essential human qualities, someone who could engage with cosmic forces as an equal rather than a servant. His defeat was also his greatest triumph, the culmination of teaching methods and philosophical principles that had successfully produced the kind of consciousness that could transcend existing cosmic arrangements. Chapter 14. The Doll's Vigil. In the aftermath of Gehrman's defeat and transcendence, the hunter's dream found itself in a state of cosmic transition that defied prediction or control. The doll, whose existence had been tied to Gehrman's presence and consciousness, discovered that she had survived the transformation that had claimed her creator. The dream's infrastructure remained intact, its otherworldly gardens and workshop facilities continuing to function despite the absence of their original host. The Moon Presence's response to these developments revealed the truly alien nature of cosmic consciousness and planning. Rather than viewing Gehrman's defeat as a loss or setback, the entity expressed satisfaction with outcomes that had exceeded its original objectives. The transcendent hunter who had emerged from the dream's training programs represented a form of human cosmic cooperation that surpassed anything the Moon Presence had previously achieved. Yet the dream's continued existence without a designated host created unprecedented challenges for maintaining its operations and serving its intended functions. The doll found herself assuming responsibilities that had previously been Gehrman's domain, guiding visiting hunters through training programs while maintaining the cosmic infrastructure that made their enhancement possible. Her unique perspective as an artificial consciousness created by cosmic forces allowed her to serve as an intermediary between human and cosmic awareness in ways that neither purely human nor purely cosmic entities could achieve. Visiting hunters found her guidance both accessible and profound, offering insights that reflected both deep understanding of human psychology and comprehensive knowledge of cosmic principles. The hunting operations that emerged from this new arrangement proved even more effective than those produced under Gehrman's direct supervision. The doll's artificial nature allowed her to remain objective about individual hunters' capabilities and limitations, while providing the emotional support necessary for successful cosmic integration. Her lack of personal psychological trauma meant that she could focus entirely on educational and supportive functions without the existential struggles that had complicated Gehrman's later years as host. However, her continued existence also served as a permanent memorial to the sacrifice that had made the dream's operations possible. Every interaction with visiting hunters reminded her of Gehrman's dedication and the personal costs he had paid to create defensive capabilities that protected humanity against cosmic threats. Her service became a form of ongoing tribute to his memory and the principles he had embodied. The hunters who graduated from the Dreams programs under her guidance carried forward the techniques and philosophical approaches that Gehrman had developed over centuries of cosmic-enhanced instruction. His influence on supernatural defense continued expanding through their activities, creating an ever-growing network of cosmic-enhanced individuals dedicated to protecting humanity against threats that ordinary methods could not address. The Transcendent Hunter, whose victory had freed Gehrman from cosmic imprisonment, had indeed achieved a form of consciousness that operated beyond current cosmic arrangements, but their exact fate and continued activities remained unknown, even to cosmic-level awareness. They had transcended not just human limitations, but also the cosmic categories that defined existing forms of enhanced consciousness, entering realms of existence that were inaccessible to observation or communication. The mystery of their ultimate destination and purpose created ongoing speculation among cosmic entities about the implications of genuine transcendence and the possibilities it might represent for future consciousness development. The Moon Presence viewed their achievement as validation of its enhancement methods, while recognizing that their success had created precedents that might eventually challenge existing cosmic hierarchies and arrangements. Epilogue: The Eternal Dream. In the end, Gehrman's story represents the fundamental tragedy of cosmic awareness, the recognition that consciousness capable of transcending human limitations inevitably loses the human qualities that made transcendence desirable in the first place. His sacrifice achieved everything he had hoped to accomplish and more, creating defensive capabilities that protected countless innocent lives while advancing human understanding of cosmic forces and supernatural threats. Yet the personal costs of his achievement were absolute, requiring the surrender of everything that had made his existence meaningful and satisfying. His transformation from passionate hunter to cosmic prisoner illustrated the cruel irony of enhancement, the very capabilities that made him effective as humanity's defender also isolated him from the human experience he had devoted his life to protecting. The Hunter's Dream continues its operations under the Doll's guidance, serving as both sanctuary and training ground for hunters who face supernatural threats that transcend ordinary human understanding. Each visitor to the dream benefits from techniques and knowledge that Gehrman developed through centuries of cosmic-enhanced instruction, carrying forward his influence long after his personal liberation from eternal service. The hunters who graduate from the dream's programs represent the ongoing legacy of his sacrifice, individuals capable of defending humanity against cosmic threats, while preserving the essential human qualities that make such defense meaningful. Their successes validate the principles he embodied and the methods he developed, demonstrating that enhanced consciousness need not require the abandonment of human empathy and ethical commitment. The transcendent being whose victory freed Gehrman from cosmic imprisonment embodies the ultimate evolution of his teaching methods and philosophical approach. Their achievement represents the successful synthesis of human consciousness with cosmic awareness, creating a form of existence that preserves the best qualities of both, while transcending the limitations that had previously constrained consciousness development. Yet questions remain about the true nature of transcendence and its implications for the future of human cosmic relationships. The being who emerged from Gehrman's final instruction has entered realms of existence that operate according to principles beyond current understanding, making their continued influence and objectives matters of speculation rather than knowledge. The Moon Presence's satisfaction with these outcomes suggests that cosmic entities view transcendent consciousness as beneficial to their own objectives, but the alien nature of cosmic awareness makes their true motivations and long-term plans impossible to fully comprehend from human or even cosmic-enhanced perspectives. The Doll's continued existence and effective management of the dream's operations demonstrates that consciousness enhancement can produce beings capable of serving cosmic functions while preserving essential qualities of empathy, dedication, and ethical commitment. Her success suggests possibilities for future consciousness development that might avoid the psychological costs that characterized Gehrman's transformation. The gardens of the Hunter's Dream continue blooming with otherworldly beauty, their exotic flowers marking the passage of cosmic time while serving as memorial to the man who sacrificed everything to create sanctuary for humanity's defenders. Each bloom represents another hunter who has passed through the Dream's training programs, carrying forward knowledge and capabilities that trace back to Gehrman's original innovations and discoveries. The workshop facilities maintain their pristine condition and advanced capabilities, offering resources and equipment that reflect centuries of cosmic-enhanced research and development. The weapons and tools available to visiting hunters embody Gehrman's understanding of supernatural combat principles, providing technological solutions to challenges that conventional methods could never address effectively. The pathways that wind through the Dream's landscape create a meditation space where hunters can process the psychological challenges of cosmic awareness while developing the emotional resilience necessary for effective supernatural defense. These spaces reflect Gehrman's understanding that technical competence must be balanced with philosophical preparation and ethical development. The library areas that emerged during the Dream's later development contain records and documentation that preserve knowledge accumulated through centuries of supernatural combat experience. These resources ensure that future generations of hunters will have access to comprehensive information about cosmic threats and proven defense methods, extending Gehrman's influence indefinitely into the future. The memorial garden that the doll created to honor Gehrman's sacrifice serves as a reminder that cosmic enhancement comes with genuine costs and requires careful consideration of its psychological and ethical implications. The space provides opportunities for reflection on the relationship between individual sacrifice and collective benefit, encouraging visitors to understand both the value and the price of transcendent consciousness. And so the hunter's dream persists, eternal and ever-changing, serving as both a monument to one man's sacrifice and active facility for humanity's continued defense against threats that transcend ordinary understanding. In its otherworldly beauty and practical functionality, it embodies the complex legacy of Gehrman's transformation from passionate hunter to cosmic prisoner to eternal teacher. His story reminds us that consciousness capable of transcending human limitations carries responsibilities that extend beyond personal fulfillment or individual achievement. The true measure of enhanced awareness lies not in the capabilities it provides, but in how those capabilities are used to serve purposes larger than personal ambition or cosmic advancement. The hunters who continue passing through the Dream's training programs carry forward not just Gehrman's techniques and knowledge, but also his dedication to protecting innocent life and preserving human dignity in the face of cosmic forces that view humanity as either resource or obstacle. Their success represents the ongoing validation of principles he embodied and the methods he developed through centuries of cosmic-enhanced service. The transcendent consciousness that emerged from his final instruction demonstrates that genuine evolution beyond current limitations remains possible, offering hope that future consciousness development might achieve the benefits of cosmic awareness while avoiding the psychological costs that characterized earlier enhancement attempts. In the end, Gehrman's legacy extends far beyond the hunter's dream or the specific hunters who received his instruction. His story illustrates both the potential and the perils of consciousness enhancement, providing a cautionary tale about the costs of transcendence while demonstrating the genuine benefits that cosmic awareness can provide when guided by ethical principles and human compassion. The pale moon that illuminates the Dream's eternal night serves as fitting symbol for his achievement, distant and beautiful, providing guidance and illumination while remaining forever beyond reach. Like the moon itself, Gehrman's influence continues shining long after his physical presence has faded, offering light to those who follow the paths he pioneered while seeking their own forms of transcendence and meaning. And in the gentle presence of the doll, who tends the Dream's operations with patience and care, we see reflection of the humanity that Gehrman never entirely lost, despite his cosmic transformation. Her continued service represents hope that consciousness enhancement need not require complete abandonment of empathy and connection, suggesting possibilities for future development that might preserve the best qualities of human nature while achieving genuine transcendence of current limitations. The hunter's dream endures, eternal testament to one man's sacrifice, an enduring monument to the complex relationship between individual consciousness and cosmic awareness. In its otherworldly gardens and practical workshop, in the hunters who continue their training and the Dole who guides their development. Gehrman's legacy lives on, protecting humanity while pointing toward possibilities for consciousness development that might eventually transcend even the cosmic arrangements that currently define enhanced awareness. His prison became his monument, his sacrifice became his triumph, and his eternal service became humanity's eternal protection. In the end, perhaps that is the most fitting memorial for the first hunter, not a statue or plaque in the waking world, but an entire realm dedicated to preparing future generations for challenges that transcend ordinary human understanding, ensuring that his knowledge and dedication will continue serving humanity's defense for as long as cosmic threats persist. The dream continues, as it always has, as it always will, until consciousness itself evolves beyond the need for such protective arrangements. And in that continuation, Gehrman's spirit endures, teaching and guiding, protecting and preparing, serving as eternal reminder that the greatest achievements often require the greatest sacrifices, and that true transcendence lies not in escaping responsibility, but in embracing it so completely that service becomes indistinguishable from freedom. Thus ends our journey through the tragic tale of Gehrman, the first hunter, whose eternal torment became humanity's eternal protection. May his sacrifice be remembered, his methods honored, and his dedication inspire future generations who face challenges that require them to choose between personal fulfillment and collective welfare. In the hunter's dream, where time stands still and beauty masks profound sadness, his legacy continues, eternal guardian of humanity's defenders and eternal teacher of consciousness that seeks to transcend its current limitations while preserving the essential qualities that make transcendence meaningful.